Hey, what's up, everybody? So today with us we have Kyle Prinsloo, and Kyle is a great freelance developer. I've been trying to get connected with him for a while. Actually, I originally introduced through Floor and Pop, or at least, sorry, my audio just went on from the stream delay. So Kyle's a great freelance developer. We've been trying to connect for a bit, and he's all over Google when it comes to freelancing. I've seen him on Free Code Camp, a bunch of YouTube videos out there. So I just want to go ahead, pick his brain, Kyle. We have a bunch of questions that were submitted through Twitter. People have also responded in the chat too. So I've been writing them down. I do have questions prepped, but what I want to do here is just go ahead and start off with a little introduction on who you are, because I know a lot of people do know that, but at the same time, there's my viewers may not fully understand or may not fully know, I guess not be fully connected there. So I just want to give you that introduction, that moment. We'll start there, and then I want to go full Q&A at some point. So let's go ahead and start with that and tell us about who you are and maybe how you got started.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for the chat, Dennis. It's awesome to be here. And I had a look at your intro image. You know, I had to laugh.
You dominate freelancing.
So yeah, thank you, and also to that guy who likes the color purple, old Florin Pop, and yeah, it's awesome to be here. So yes, I've been freelancing now since about 2015, and about full time now for I think 2016, 2017. So good, probably about 5 odd years full time, and it's been an amazing journey this far. It was not an easy journey. A lot of it I had to, figure it out and learn on the job, and all of that. But I'm sure we'll get into, if you would like a lot more detail, and that sort of brought me to a place where I'm at now, where I'm grateful to, actually still be freelancing. Freelancing is actually a main part of my income at the moment, a lot more than my digital products now at the moment. So I'm grateful for that. And now I just pretty much share what I know with freelancing with my blog studywebdevelopment.com, and it's been an amazing journey this far. So I really love what I do, put it that way.
Awesome. Yeah, I just finished watching your story. I've seen it a couple of times. I'm sure you've told it 1,000 times already, but it was moving to South Africa, I believe, or your girlfriend moved over, or your wife, and she couldn't work, and how she got you into that from your background in marketing into freelancing. And did you say 2015?
Yeah.
That's funny.
2015 is, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. So 2015 was a start when you started freelancing, right? Or at least web development.
Yeah. It was both. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. That was actually my start. It was kind of like 2014, but when I really started freelancing was 2015, and I kind of did it differently with a business. I guess actually like starting up like a full company around it and hiring people too. But yeah, that's kind of cool. So same time frame.
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, you came from that marketing background. So same thing here. Can you go into that story? Because I really like that, where it was just something that you weren't traditionally from the web development background, but you went into that because you said your girlfriend was trying to figure stuff out, and you were just and she motivated you to go that direction. How was that?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it started when let me start from the beginning, right? So I dropped out of high school for various reasons, and it was really not easy from there. So it was a lot of struggles and odd jobs, random jobs. It's amazing. I must just share this story. I got 43% in my final end year in accounting, but yet I found myself in an accounting job. I don't know how that happened, but anyway. And so I found myself in accounting. I found myself in tech, in IT installations, like networking and all that. I didn't do any of the knowledge side. I was just sort of there as like an apprentice guy, sort of like holding the ladders as these guys sort of install everything. And that was an interesting journey that led me also. I found another job in selling insurance products. So I was like all over the place, right? I needed some form of income. It didn't really work that well. Then that sort of led me into really thinking about what I want to do. And I've always enjoyed business related things. I've always enjoyed the psychology of online, in other words, like websites and marketing, and I think one of the main stories that sort of motivated me, encouraged me, was the case study of the Amazon $400 million button. If any of you are interested, definitely do Google that. And in short, what it's about is, it's about how Amazon, one employee at Amazon made one change to one word on a call to action button, and it resulted in a net income of $400 million for Amazon. So I found that like fascinating, and that sort of got me on my quest of like, whoa, like what is this like psychology of like conversions on a website? So that led me to study. And I studied a short-term course. I found a short-term course on digital marketing as well as business management. So what I used to do was I used to work at my IT job and walk across the road to the college and study there at night. And I did that for a few months. Eventually, in one of my HR human resources professors, he had a friend in a big business looking for someone in marketing. So I was like, hey, I'm your guy, So. So he put me in touch, went for the interview, got the job, and my responsibility was the marketing manager overseeing this. It was quite a large company, and they had like 10 different businesses, and I was overseeing it pretty much. I had to make sure that they were growing, right, and getting more sales and all of that. So I was at the company for about 2 years. And although my income was sort of fine for one person, eventually my wife and I got married. She's from India, and she came to live with me in South Africa, and finances were tight, right? So I was forced to like look for another source of income, and I knew I could ask for a salary increase, but that's not pretty much the solution. So then eventually my wife told me, and she said like, hey, why don't you study web development? Hence studywebdevelopment.com. And I was like, no ways, like that's like a foreign language. I'm not going to learn that stuff, and it's just weird. So my wife is amazing. She persuaded me to like really look into that a lot more. And I was like, not a bad idea, because I've got marketing knowledge on the one hand, somewhere here, and then web development knowledge, and it combines very well, right? So that I could offer clients a once-off marketing, once-off web design service, plus an ongoing marketing retainer to help them grow their business. So in 2015, I started learning web development. I got a client, and studywebdevelopment.com was born because I wanted to share what I knew, what worked for me, recommendations on courses to learn and all of that. And sort of, I realized that in my learning to be a freelancer, there was a lot of fluff online, and I'm not a fluffy guy. I just want, the 80-20, give it to me and let's go, So I thought, let me add my 2 cents and see what people think. And before I knew it, after about a year, I was earning more on the side as a freelancer than my full-time job. And I left that full-time full-time position in marketing after 3.5 years. And as they say, the rest is history. So I hope that explains it.
Yeah, I love that story. That's a story that I've heard a few times just from watching those other ones. But there's a lot of nuggets, I guess, in what you said right there. And it's funny, I didn't realize that we were so similar, I guess, in that business aspect and the marketing. And I think you would actually agree that marketing right there is probably one of the biggest keys to being successful in freelancing. Is probably what helped you get that big start, because I was going to address it later, but I think you would agree, maybe not, we'll see. But I think marketing, if you needed one skill outside of the technical stuff in freelancing, it would probably be that.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, by far. Like that's something that like I think a lot of tech people do struggle with in that original entry into freelancing. Yeah, and also the side business, the fact that you started it on the side, where a lot of people think I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to make $100,000 this year. And I actually just posted, that was one of the questions, was people were asking, it was that thing where I asked people to ask you these questions, and somebody said, can you share your income? I'm not going to ask you to do that unless you want to talk some numbers, but I went ahead and did that, and my numbers weren't the way people would probably expect them to be. And I'll actually pull that up at some point. But the whole thing where you replaced your business or your original income, and then freelancing kind of took over. Yeah, I love what you said there, and I just want to highlight those points right there. So as far as I guess when you got started, it was on the side, so you definitely took some pressure off yourself. When you got started, how was that process of getting that first client? Because that was probably the most commonly asked question. Still, the question that I get today is, what did that look like? Like, I don't want to just go for what it takes to get it, but what did that look like for you? Did you just start telling people? Did you start posting somewhere? And who, I guess, what type of client was that, if you don't mind sharing? It doesn't have to be the client itself, but the industry maybe.
Yeah, sure. I think I do want to touch on, on the income side, and say like, I've always sort of felt a bit weird talking about the income side,
For sure.
because, I mean, put it this way, like I'm grateful to say that or put it this way, freelancing has led to various different incomes, and the main income up until recently was actually an e-commerce business. I had 2 e-commerce businesses. One of them I was both of them I was actually in partnerships in, and that was like quite a large income. So if you add all the incomes together, it's really a lot of income. If I can say that, I don't like giving the exact amounts, but it's
no need to go into that.
It's like multiple 6 figures, so it's really a good amount. Now, in terms of the freelancing side, because I know, obviously you don't want to be like as a fraud, right? I really hate that, like guys sort of teaching you how to make money online by making money by teaching you how to make money online, if that sort of makes sense. And in short, what I will say is that my freelancing income is at a point where I've sort of jumped in between a lot of different businesses. So it wasn't always my focus over the years, but it is 6 figures, and it's a lot more than my digital products at the moment. So I just want to sort of at least mention that, and then in terms of your question about how I got this first client, it was that question, right?
It was. How was that? How did you get that first client, and what was the industry? I guess also going into the tech stack too. Like, I know we're kind of veering off here, but were you using WordPress? What kind of sites were you building to? Because I think that's relevant to this. I think that's a great question, actually, to maybe begin the foundation in terms of my knowledge, right? And it's amazing. Like, I chat to people like all the time, and it's like I really have arguments with them, because a lot of people think that like you need to know like React and all the different like 13,000 JavaScript languages to be able to make a good income, and it's sort of the perception of like the more advanced programming languages that I know, the more I should be earning as a freelancer because I know more than you, right? But actually it's like completely anti that, right? It boils down to a simple fact. If you can create websites, you can start freelancing, right? So now let's sort of dissect that a bit more. What does it take to build a website? You don't need Node.js and SQL and whatever. Let's go to the basics. HTML, CSS, maybe a bit of JavaScript, but there's all of those Tailwind and Bootstrap that sort of make things a bit easier and functional. And also WordPress. You've got WordPress, you've got Webflow, you've got all of those things, and it's amazing when I tell people that you don't even need to know a coding language. There are plenty of freelancers who earn 6 figures a year just on Webflow, just on WordPress, but they do not know how to code, a div in HTML, and I think that's important to mention. So in that case, just to sort of wrap up that point, my knowledge is extremely basic. I've tried to learn a lot of JavaScript, even though I love Brad Traversi's courses, but it didn't stick with me, right? I sort of stuck to HTML and CSS and the basics, WordPress, and currently now I'm in the process of learning a lot of Webflow, and that's pretty much it. If that answers that question. Yeah, that's awesome, because that's been my experience. I ran my freelancing business for the first 3 years, I think, with not knowing any code outside of HTML and CSS, and even then I started before doing that. I think the first year and a half, I didn't know any HTML and CSS. It was just WordPress. The first website was actually Wix. So that's a good, I guess, depending on the type of freelancer you're getting into, yeah, it's a good thing to know, because people do have that understanding that I have to learn all this, have to be all prep. No, if you can build, it's not the only skill you're going to need, but as far as a tech right there, it's enough to get started. It might not be the best, it might not be ideal, but it's, you can go from there. Absolutely.
Exactly. And I see, I think it's Shaida Muhammad. There's quite an apt quote, because I say that like all the time. If you can create a website, you can start freelancing. So
yeah,
100%.
I love it. Definitely good.
Yeah.
So okay, so I guess that client then, we haven't addressed that one yet. The client was what kind of industry, and how did you find them?
Sorry, you broke up there a little bit, but
so the first client.
But I did hear you.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's my first client. How did I find him? Which industry was he in? And I'm gonna say it. I found my first client on Fiverr.
That's the story I wanted to pull out of you.
So I don't know if anyone is still with us now, but okay. So let me start at the beginning, right? Before you sort of think a bit weird about this, I want to say something right from the start. Freelancing platforms are not my number one recommendation. I recommend it as an option and not the option. In my personal experience, number one recommendation to actually get clients is your portfolio website. I believe that helps quite a lot. Okay, now with that disclaimer, I want to explain to you how I got my first client on Fiverr. So what I did was I looked at the web development category, and I saw that it was extremely saturated. I mean, you've got like thousands of people competing and saying, "Hey, I will do web development for you. I'll create a website for you, $5, for a website or something." And it's like, listen, I'm desperate, but I'm not that desperate, So, I thought, I'm like, whoa, what can I do to really think about this a bit differently from like a strategic point of view? And I thought, let me sort of flip it around a bit, and let me offer a website analysis report. So that way I would offer a service, like a 3-page PDF or 4-page PDF on someone letting me know their website. I'll go through it and I will critique it. I'll give some feedback. This is what I found good. This is what I think you can improve on, and my suggestions, right? So what I did was, right from the beginning, I knew that no one's going to place an order with someone who doesn't have any reviews. So I did do some work from an ethical standpoint. I did do some work for my mom and my brother when I was like 15, 16, 17, like random stuff. And I said, hey, will you, leave a review for me? Okay, so I got 2 5-star reviews. I'm glad they didn't give a 2-star review, so that helps. And they, and that was very much a foundational aspect of the portfolio, right? Then I'm like, whoa, what else can help me differentiate myself from all these other hundreds of other profiles also offering the same service? And I thought, let me get a video explainer animation. So it's like a video intro instead of like a static image that you'll see on Fiverr. And I remember clearly it cost me $84. That was a lot of money for me at the time. And I got this cool looking like animation, right, to sell my service. Now, the foundation, my profile, everything. I was at work, and about a few weeks later, I got the first email to be like, I got my first order. And I was like, woo! I got so excited. And I looked at the email, and in my lunch break, my heart was beating. So I was waiting to get back home that night and sort of reply. So I really aimed to over-deliver. Did the website report. This was a client in the HVAC industry. He was selling air coolers, and his website sucked. So I love that, because that means that I see a lot of potential, and I knew that his marketing was not good at all. So I gave some feedback in that, and I'm like, hey, here's my suggestions, all of that. And I said, now, very important, I think this is very important. So I charged $5. My cut was $4. I spent a lot of time on this report. I pretty much didn't make money, if you want to think of it that way. But when I delivered the website proposal to this guy, I said, look, here's the website proposal. If you would like me to design a wireframe for you, which in other words is a visual representation of the website, or like an improved look, I'll charge you $100. So it's an upsell, right? He went ahead with it, which I was very grateful for, and I celebrated like crazy. on that. And that was my first $100 online. That was amazing. So then what I did was I designed the wireframe in PowerPoint. I was efficient in PowerPoint at the time. No such thing as Photoshop. I couldn't afford that, and I didn't, know how to do it. So I created the wireframe, and now again, I over-delivered. I really went the extra mile, and I said, look, here's your wireframe, here's your design. If you would like me to implement this wireframe and design, I'll charge you $1,000. Okay, he went ahead with it, and let me tell you, that was a big celebration. Like my wife and I took my wife out to like a nice meal. Like that was a party. That was a party. Okay, so now. So now, very important, that $5 turned into $100, turned into $1,000. And to wrap up this point, this client ordered 8 more websites. He ordered a marketing retainer of $1,000 a month, and he also referred me to other clients. So if you do the and also one other thing, this client is still with me today. Okay, so my very first client is still with me. And you can do the calculations of like what $5 turned into, right? And that's pretty much the story. I know it sort of doesn't happen for a lot of people, which I'm grateful for, but I just wanted to show you and highlight, the principle of that in these job platforms, about how to think of it a bit differently and approach it a bit differently, and also not to underestimate, small services, because it could turn into, a decent amount.
Yeah, and that's what I love from that story is the principle. I've told so many people that story right there from Fiverr, and it's funny because you always get that first initial reaction. People like cringe the second you say Fiverr or any other, I guess, online platform, or they will have had experience using it and they can't get anywhere. But if you go in with that approach, I always say, people that know how to make money or know how to apply certain skills can make money in any environment. In your case, you made thousands just out of that one client, and that client probably gave you a review. They probably gave you recommendations. There's no real way of telling you what that client did. And I don't think that's a unicorn story either, because I've had that too. I built out my first couple of websites for free, but the level of reviews that I've had from that, like, you have to break in the industry somehow, right? And that was your first client. This is where I get that kickback, but I just can't explain the principle enough from that. And I love the retainers too. You're able to upsell. People miss out on that. And that's where marketing experience comes in, not just marketing, but even like a business background, or at least educating yourself in those skills and negotiating with the client too, right? So you got the sale, let's say you marketed yourself, but how do you, I guess, become a salesman, which is kind of scary to people, but you're just selling an additional service. You're showing them more value, and people don't finish mining the gold mine. They'll just pull out a nugget out of it, and that's it. They'll take that check and say, okay, I made my $500. And that's it. When that client could have paid way more, especially through referrals.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And I think that's a great point. If I can just highlight that, because this is pretty much like a lot of what I try and get through to a lot of developers. It's pretty much just a mind shift change, right? In the sense that if you learn a skill such as digital marketing, and that's simple stuff. I mean, that's like AdWords, SEO, social media, things like that. Advertising online, you can offer that as a service. That's a valuable service to offer clients. And the thing is, most developers are very quick to say, whoa, I charged $10,000 for this website, like a massive amount, right? And it's like, wow, great. But you do know that you could have charged, let's say, $5,000 for the website and $2,000 a month for the marketing, And it's like, and that's sort of, that's pretty much always been my approach. And that's like why I sort of explain that to others as well.
Yeah, golden. So the pricing structure, then I want to get into that because I love your value-based pricing system too. I've talked about that, not in exactly the terms that you have, but when you're coming up with that $1,000, how do you find out what that's worth? And then also, I guess we'll open it up after this answer, but I want to go down into a regular pricing structure of how you decide how long a project will take, how much you should charge for it. And I guess going down that road. So how did you decide on that $1,000 and then those upsells? And did you charge lower, I guess?
Great question. Yeah, great question. So I would say over the years, my process has really fine-tuned a lot, right? I learned a lot through the processes. I learned a lot of how to handle client objections as well, Like, for example, if they say, oh, wow, you're way too expensive, and like, oh, but it should take you, like a week to do it, and, all of that type of stuff. But at the beginning, in the case of this Fiverr client, I sort of just winged it, to be honest with you. Like I just thought of like, okay, he's willing to pay $100 for a wireframe. Surely he's willing to pay $1,000 for the website, And I thought to myself, I'm like, look, it might take me, let's say 2 weeks or 3 weeks at the time to actually create this website. And I thought that's a decent amount considering I'm like a complete newbie. So I'll just sort of give the price, right? So essentially, what I did there was maybe to answer your overall question in terms of pricing. Let me start with that. So in pricing, I would say there's generally, there's many different ways, like even profit sharing and all of that. I won't get into that, but generally speaking, there's about 3 ways that you can charge for a website, and that is fixed pricing, that is hourly billing, and that is value-based pricing. So number one, in this Fiverr that I gave to him was I essentially gave a fixed price, right? So I said, look, I'm going to charge you $1,000 and I will do everything, take it or leave it type thing. So the way that you want to approach fixed pricing is you want to sort of work out like your costs. Maybe you need to buy a theme or buy a plugin or outsource certain tasks to someone else, or you want to work out, let's say your salary. I'm just giving a random number, but let's just say your salary is $5,000 a month, and you would like then to say like, look, I need to make a profit and cover my salary at least. So I'm going to charge, it's going to take me a month. I'm going to charge, let's say, $7,000 or something. So that's pretty much like a fixed pricing model. You work out your costs, you add in some profit, you give the price, and you have to deliver. Okay. Now, in terms of, I would say, let me start with the hourly billing approach, right? So I actually recently wrote, like, literally, probably about 22 hours ago, it went live on Free Code Camp, and I made the argument like, so I think it's titled something like, should you charge by the hour, or is there a better approach? And let me start by saying this: hourly billing it works for a lot of people, but that's not, I wouldn't recommend it. I think there's a better alternative to hourly billing. So very important. I'm not saying it does not work. Okay. Now, with that disclaimer, it's very important to have disclaimers these days. So hourly billing, right? Let's just look at this from like a practical standpoint, instead of trying to look at it like from a number standpoint. Hey, what is the going rate for someone with my experience and so on? Let me ask you a question. You charge hourly billing. What happens if you're sick for 2 weeks, if you're ill for 2 weeks or for 4 weeks? Are you going to get paid for those 2 weeks or 4 weeks? No, your income is zero, right? Now, let me ask you, Dennis, can you create e-commerce websites?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you say you're actually very good at creating e-commerce websites?
Yep, I can do it by hand. I can use WordPress, a lot of platforms with it. Yes.
Perfect. Now, and I've got a great scenario for you now. Okay, so now I've given you the images, the product information. Let's say it's like 20 products. I've given you all of that stuff. I'm sure with confidence you could get that website from start to finish in probably 4 hours, maximum 1 day, right? Would that be right to assume?
Yeah, if I'm using something like WordPress, I'm sure I can get that done in a day pretty much. Yep.
Great. So now let's say hypothetically you charge $100, $200 an hour. So now would you think it's fair, right, to charge your $100 times 8 hours, $800 for the website? Would you think that's fair?
Definitely not, no.
Yeah, exactly. Because you would have to create like 22 websites a day to pretty much get your full-time salary. And that's so what I'm trying to get to is hourly billing actually discourages your knowledge, right? Let's use another example. Let's say you're a senior developer and you charge, I don't know, like $250 an hour, like a high amount, because you justified like, well, I'm just going to charge higher for my hourly rate, So now you charge your $250, and now you've got another guy who's like a junior or intermediate guy, and he charges, $100 an hour. But now you know to solve this problem, it will take you 1 hour. But this other junior guy takes him 3 hours. He makes $300. You know, so in that sense, he's earning more than you. Yes, he's working longer hours, but if you look at it from a financial side, he's earning more than you purely because he can delay. The other one is, sorry if I'm rambling, but there's quite a few.
No, I love the point. I love that you're saying this because I just made a video on this, and you're hitting every point that I made right now.
Great.
So, yeah, I love it.
Oh, great. And also, and sorry if I can add another one, is that, you know, it discourages efficiency, right? I mean, let's say there's a quicker way to solve this problem. Let's say you're building like a CMS, you know, or you know, Webflow incredibly well, or you can code to solve this problem very quickly, or you might have like for example, Tailwind UI. It makes websites so quick, you know. I mean, you can whip something up in a few hours, really. And now you've got all of these tools at your disposal. Let's say you need to buy a plugin for $100 or a website template from ThemeForest, for example, to help you code this whole website even quicker. Would you do that? Because essentially what you're doing now is you're coding it a lot quicker, and now it's essentially costing you money, because you know. And the other side I want to mention is hourly billing is actually probably the biggest cause for a lot of arguments or disagreements with clients. In other words, a lot of admin, right? If you think of it from the approach of like, let's say in your mind, you know, you build for 180 hours, you know, but now the client in his mind thought, listen, it should not have taken you this long. It should have taken you 80 hours, you know, you're not being fair. And then it's disagreements like, whoa, but it only took you that long because your knowledge sucks, you know, and you don't know the topic very well. So why must I pay for learning on the job, you know? And it's just a lot of hassle. So I don't know if that sort of makes sense, but you know, if that's a convincing side about like why I don't like hourly.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I need to take that little bit right here after this stream, snip that, and I want to post that on its own probably, because you said it perfectly right there. You're discouraging your own time right there. Somebody who's less knowledgeable now. You almost don't want a client knowing what's behind the scenes, right? Like you have your skill set. So somebody that's been coding, let's say, or been developing for 25 years that can get something done in 3 hours is now, like you said, completely discouraged. Clients are very afraid because if they don't know how long something's going to take you, they're going to be calling you all the time. Trust me, I'm sure you know what that's like to have clients calling you every day and having to update them because they want to know if they're over a certain limit because they don't know how much this project is going to cost them. But when you set that fixed rate, you are in full control of what you make. And at the same time, you can end up making, I mean, I've had clients where I think I've made over $800 an hour based on what I build. It took me 3 hours. But yeah, it's just by speed, or just because I happen to have a template that was already like that. Like I just finished up with another client that had the same exact project. All I had to do was modify something and I charge them the same price. There you go. You know, it's just like that.
Exactly.
But yeah,
exactly.
It's perfectly. I love it.
Awesome. And in terms of value-based pricing, so I think the best way to think about value-based pricing is, in a way, it's pretty much the opposite of hourly billing, because in hourly billing, you're essentially selling your time. Value-based pricing, you're essentially selling the potential value or return of the website or changes or problem that you're solving, right? And then basing your amount or your fee off of that potential return. So I think let me start by saying this: like, I've sort of gotten much better at value-based pricing over the years, and to get it right from the beginning might be a bit challenging, right? Because I think there's some guidelines to it, but it also requires simple things like, I mean, requires confidence to actually like really believe that you can, you know, charge that amount. And also from a practical standpoint, I mean, you really need to know what you're talking about. You know, I mean, you can't be a fraud and like sort of fake your way to, you know, earning a good amount. Doesn't work, you know. So I think let me start with that disclaimer again. Value-based pricing. Let me use an example. I think I always use this example. It's like you need to know two things. Let's say you, Dennis, you've got a 3D printing business, right? And you sell 3D printers. Great niche, by the way, as a side note. Okay, so you sell 3D printers, and you've got an existing website, and you approach me and you're like, hey Kyle, can you create a website for me? I'll say, sure. Very important. I don't say, tell me about your website. Tell me exactly what you want. How many pages is it going to be? And all of that. I'm like, okay, it's going to cost you, X, right? The approach I will take is I ask two very important questions. I say this. I say, how much is your average product? And you tell me, let's say, how much is your average 3D printer? And you tell me $10,000, right? It's these big 3D printers. And I tell you, okay, and I ask you, okay, how many printers on average do you sell each month? And you tell me 10. So I know that your small little business, you make $20,000 a month. So then the next step, what I would do, right, is I would look at your website and I would analyze it, and I'll be like, if they are making 20,000 a month based on this current look, is there anything that I can do to improve it? Do I see any conversion improvements that I know for a fact work? Now, side note, where am I getting this from? Number two, experience. And number one, experience. And number two, sorry, and the other one is by learning, right? There are plenty of valuable resources on conversion rate optimization. So really just type that in on Google. You'll find incredible tips on conversion rate optimization. It's going to blow your mind. Okay. So now, based on that, I would then look through their website, look through their current advertising, see how much they're spending each month on advertising, see the marketing channels that they are using. Only if I see any improvements that can be made, I would give them a proposal, right? If I can't, I'll say, I think you're doing great. I can't help you. Maybe someone else can. Very important. Now, if I see potential based on the website and advertising that I can make improvements to increase their sales, I would then work on, based on experience and knowledge, like, if you Dennis are selling 10 3D printers a month, I know for a fact, based on previous experience with other e-commerce clients, that I can definitely increase your monthly sales by let's say 3 extra units a month. So even just a 30% increase in terms of your sales, right? So that's $6,000 a month, right? Now, very important. In my proposal, in my website proposal to the client, as a side note, you must always give three pricing options. Maybe we can get into that a bit more, but as a general rule, so $6,000, I would bench it off, right? So I would say the increase in sales that I predict for you is 3 sales a month, $6,000 a month, and I would times that by 12, and I would say, look, I'm quite confident, and you never use the word with certainty. So you say, I'm confident that with these changes, you will receive at least an increase of $72,000 for the year, right? Now what you do is you've already price anchored that $72,000 in this guy's mind, in your mind, right? So now what I would do is I would base my price off of that potential return of $72,000 that I think is extremely realistic for you to make after my changes. Now here's the question. How much should you charge based on that 72,000? Should you charge 50,000? No, good luck. If only, right? So as a general blueprint, I mean, if you Google it as well, like, yes, it depends on the type of industry and business that you're in. Let's say you're in a software company versus, like a brick and mortar sort of business or a service industry. Your profit margins are a lot higher, right? Compared to like someone selling flowers or something like that, So now a general rule is 10%. 10% of your annual income you should be earning on marketing each year, right? So let's say, for example, your increase, as I predicted, is 72,000. I could quite comfortably and confidently charge $7,200 for the website, but I usually actually charge a bit less. So in this case, I might charge $6,500. Okay, just to make it sound a little bit better instead of like 7,200. So as you can see, it's sort of like there are some technical principles and guidelines to follow, but in a way it's sort of like a gray sort of art where you just sort of have to sort of use common sense and just sort of figure that out. So a lot was said in that one. So let me know if you have any follow-up questions.
No, I love it. So I wanted to add to it. So first of all, you're going to sound very confident to your client. And I can pull up an example, or I'll mention an example too. So when a client knows that you know their industry, you set yourself apart from any other developer that might be quoting them, right? Because I've had people say, I can't even sell a website for $100. How can I do it for $1,000? That's because they're taking this arbitrary number, or they're just going as low as they can, something they found online. Your client doesn't care what you need to make. They're trying to run their business. And as a business owner, they understand how to create, how to invest and actually make money out of putting that money somewhere, I guess, investing something. So the example I use with your story is a coffee shop that when I was trying to do this whole value-based pricing, because that's the exact model that I use too. I'm doing keyword research. I'm looking at what can I improve for this client? How much of the traffic are they missing by not, let's say, having better search results with SEO? How can I improve that? And if I improve that, how much of their traffic can I increase with that too? So you can see a lot of competitor stuff, other coffee shops in my example. And based off of that, I'm taking a percentage off that. But the client loves that I can tell them what their market's like. I sat down with a coffee shop owner and I said, hey, you're missing out on about 3,000 searches a month. If we can pull in, I feel like we can take in, let's say, about 5% of that traffic. This is what an average customer spends now. So the customer is now seeing themselves working with me. They see that I know what I'm talking about. And now when it comes to that number, I can charge them $100,000. They wouldn't care if I can tell them I can make $2,000. I think it was Kyle Web Dev Simplified. I forgot his last name. He was saying, if I give you $10 and you can give me or promise me $20 back, or not promise, but almost guarantee that. He says there's nobody in the world that wouldn't just hand out $10 bills left and right because they know they can get that back. So that's what I love about that value-based pricing approach too. It's you're actually showing your worth rather than just giving a number and opening or burning a hole, I guess, in your client's pocket. Love it.
I like that. I like that approach in a way. I think it actually might be better to maybe combine the two as well. Essentially, what you're doing is you basing it off. Okay, so this is a good example, right? You doing it from a different perspective, which I find fascinating. I think it's a great way to approach it. So really good, because you're saying like this is the potential of what you are missing out on, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas in this case, I might approach it. I don't have the example technically of a coffee shop, but let's just use it, right? So in my case, I would like to say like, look, what's the busiest time of the day, of the month for you, and what is the average price, of like a product that you offer? Is it like a cappuccino and like a breakfast? Okay, how much is that worth to an average customer, right? And how many customers can you get in one seating, and how much at capacity are you? Because if you're at 50%, there's 50% more room to grow, and if you times at 50%, that you could make each day times by 30 days in a month, that's potentially what you could be making, and I could help you with that, and sort of base the price sort of technically off of that, which is quite interesting. I find that approach. I think both can work quite well, because from a sense of like working on like opportunities, like what you're missing out on, versus okay, here's your current business. Let's sort of work on what you're currently doing and what you sort of, what you can do to improve it, as well. I think maybe a mix of both might even work quite solid. I like that.
Yeah. And you'll find, like I said, they will open up that checkbook without hesitating, because they can see the potential return. So before we get into that, I see a question actually from Cody from Web Dev Junkie, but I want to address that. The keyword research, if for anybody that is doing the SEO stuff, I just want to reference that. Go to Google Keyword Planner, or just Google up keyword research tools. Type in any keyword, find out what's popular in that area, or if you're working on a global product. There's also Moz, that's moz.com, I believe. That was their website. So there's a lot of tools like this where you can come to your client and sound very smart, because you can just pump in the keywords and know exactly what you're targeting.
And sorry, and Uber Suggest. That's what I use. It's a lot cheaper than Ahrefs and all those Mars and all of that, and it works just as good. So I just want to add that.
I'm definitely going to write that one down. So Uber suggest. Awesome. So somebody donated. Wow, Stefan, thank you so much. I'll get to that question in a second. I want to answer Cody's here. So let's pull this up because this is a really good question. And this is actually, it was on my list of things to ask you. So we talked about the value-based pricing system, right? Well, a lot of people could end up taking on a contract and overestimating or underestimating. For example, I hired somebody one time that told me they were going to charge me $5,000 to build out the system that my company needed. So I was in charge of doing the hiring. I ended up having to, or our company ended up having to pay him $7,500, and we way overpaid what the bid was. And we actually ended up taking a loss on the product that he never delivered at the end of the day. So how do you ensure for a product, let's say somebody says, build me out this database system for our company that can also send reports to clients. That's a lot to do. There's a lot of research in that. How do you price that? And I have a few solutions myself, so I do want to jump in on this one, but I would love to hear what you think.
Great. Okay, so on those instances, I've turned clients down, right? If I feel that the website project is just going to be way too complicated, I mean, I've had client proposals where it's like it could be a massive amount, but I'm just not willing to take the risk, and it's going to take so much time, and to deal with this contractor and all of that. But let's say you did want the project, right? Let's say you needed the project and you needed the cash. So I always use this example, like, first of all, I never do software development. I'm not interested in that right now, right? But let's say, for example, I use this example that, let's say a client asks me, Kyle, you've got this website and you've done great, you're handling our marketing well, but we want an app. We want an iPhone and Android app, right? You know what I would say? I would say, sure, no problem. Do I know anything about apps? Not at all. I wouldn't even know where to start, right? But my very first step is this. I would ask the client, okay, tell me exactly what you want this app to do. What do you have in mind? Do you have any design, ideas of how you would like it to look like? Practical questions, right? I would then take this brief from the client and I would look for someone on Upwork. I find Upwork quite a good place, or maybe someone on Twitter. I've hired a few people from Twitter, or Hubstaff Talent, or whatever. Bottom line is I'll find a contractor, for this project who knows it well, who I can trust ideally. So then what I would do is I would send them this brief, and then let's say this guy tells me, like, look, it might cost, $5,000. I don't know. He gives me that price, right? Now, this is where I think a lot of people sort of go wrong. Maybe if I can start off by saying I wouldn't feel comfortable doing value-based pricing in this method. Sorry, I should maybe start off with that. So I would rather provide a fixed pricing for this first project, and then maybe the second app I would do, and third I would, charge more value-based side. So I should have started with that disclaimer. Okay, now with that said, right? Let's say this contractor charges me $5,000. I will not tell the client $6,000 or $7,000. No, because I know for a fact this contractor is not going to charge $5,000. There's going to be changes that need to be made. So I'm going to budget that in. I'm going to say, listen, this guy's going to charge me $6,500, $7,000. So I'm going to work out my cost being $7,000, right? Then I'm going to work out, look, I need to make some profit off of this because I know there's going to be some back and forth, the project management with this contractor. So I'm going to add another buff of $1,000. So that's $8,000. But you know what? I know there's going to be some random things in between, calls with a client and all this other stuff. I'm going to charge another $500 extra. So I would say I would be more comfortable charging, let's say, $8,500, where I think there's some wiggle room to make some profit, to sort of take some risk, and make some changes. And I think that'll be a decent learning curve. So I'd be willing to take a risk on something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that approach. So I've actually dealt with this, and this is one of the harder things to kind of work with because most when you're talking about software development projects, let's say you talked about the app or anything like that, you're not really just delivering a product. You're working on something that you are going to have a service contract with too. So working that into it. So I'll just pull up an example. I have a client that wants a system built out, and the first approach is to be blatantly honest with them and let them know that it's really hard to project this, and give them almost like your worst case scenario, I guess, for the client at least, and what a better situation may be. So in this case, and I don't know if I'm going to take this bid, but this is what I'm working on because I haven't freelanced since like 2019. I'm telling the client this product on the high end is probably going to cost about $70,000 to get this thing in the first working model, but it also could go to 40,000. So I give myself a huge buffer, and they need to understand that there's no way of actually knowing. There's always changes. I'm going back and forth to the company. I'm having to figure out their system and what's going on there. So I give myself a big buffer. Then what I do is I say, okay, but before we start there, we're not just going to go ahead and, have you write us a $40,000 check. I want to go back in and I want to figure out what it's going to take to build out that minimal viable product. So I make the client explain to me what is the first working version of this product. Let's draw up everything. Let's draw up all the features, and then let's take away 90% of that. What can this product just function on without all these bells and whistles? Let's start there, and let's go for that MVP, and let's sign a $15,000 check, and let's go ahead and start there. And then we will continue to reapproach this. So constant communication. The communication in this case, like you said, you can't do value based. It has to be more of a set price, but that price still has to be adjustable. So not value based, but something that we mutually understand, because the client needs to understand that there's people that build these high rises. The cost of a high rise is never set in stone. They may quote you at $3 billion, let's say, to build a skyscraper, but that ends up being 4.5. So they already work that in, and people understand that. So I would say constant communication, and then section the project off. Try to find different goals for that, and then continue to adjust from that. So if I can get you that MVP, let's do this, and then we'll re-sign the next one, and we'll go in increments. So I would say do that. But it's a skill that you're going to have to develop. If you don't have the skill to be able to project that, then you may not be, not that you're not ready to freelance, then you may need to lower your price and lower your own expectation, because that is a skill that a client is going to want from you. It's not just your good development skills. They want you to be able to price them right and fairly, and be able to manage a project. That's where, as a freelancer, you're more than just a developer.
I like it. I agree. And just to quickly also add on that, like, this reminds me of I think it was like last year, February, we had like a prospective client that they gave us a big brief, and it was a big project, and it was going to cost, tens of thousands, right? And we suggested an MVP to him that I think it cost, we quoted like 10,000 or 8,000. And yeah, I think that's some great advice, in like sort of like looking at like what can you do as an MVP, and let's start there,
Yeah, exactly. So I was going to go more into some technical stuff too, like invoicing and all that, but I think I want to leave this out because I like where we're at. We're going into some nitty gritty stuff here. So things like invoicing software and all that, I think that's more stuff you can Google up, but that's stuff that you will need: how to invoice a client, how to actually present that. I do like your 3 approach, or your 3 prices approach too. And it's funny because I listened to your stream with Kyle from Web Dev Simplified, and I can't remember if you just said it or if it was from that stream, but you talked about offering your client 3 options and why you do that. Did we just cover that? I'm completely thrown off between the two.
Yeah. So we didn't talk about it. It was mentioned, like,
I see. Okay,
I did mention it, like, look, do charge, 3. Do you want to talk about that now? Or
yeah, absolutely. I love that, because that's something that I would use in order to get a client to go into a direction that I wanted. But if I maybe overestimated their budget, let's say I thought they can spend, let's say 5,000, but they really only can spend 2. If you give them those 3 options, which I want to get into right now, you're able to still work with the client to negotiate better. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Great. Yeah, sure. So I think, let me start off by saying this, right? Point 1, when you meet with a client, I did this plenty of times at the beginning, and I don't have the patience to do this anymore, right? So I learned a lot from it. You have a long meeting with a client, back and forth phone calls. It's like, cool, I'll give you a proposal, I'll present it, I'll send it through to you next week. And you spent hours on this thing. Now, all of a sudden, you send the proposal and they're like, what? This is far out of my budget, where do you come up with this? I don't care about your value-based pricing, I can only afford like a tenth of that, right? And that happened to me a few times, and I was like, screw this, I'm not going to make the same mistake again and waste my time, right? So I ask a qualifying question to the client. They should not be interviewing me, I should be interviewing them, so I asked them this question, and I think it's very important. So you can paraphrase it and use it as you want, but I asked this qualifying question. I say, do you have a budget set aside? Do you have a budget set aside for this project, and is it at least over X? Okay.
I love that. Sorry, I just wanted to interrupt there. That's the qualifying questions. You're going to save yourself so much time and headache. I just stamp that.
Yeah, agreed. And look, if they say, like, let's say, for example, in your mind, you're thinking like, look, this is quite a big project. I don't have time to sort of figure it out. Let me just throw a random number and be like, look, I'm not willing to accept this project for, let's say $3,000 or $5,000, whatever amount you feel comfortable with, at least, because you said at least, you're not saying it's going to be that price. And if they say, look, like, whoa, we are so far out, I was expecting $500, then you say, look, maybe when you grow to a bigger size, I'm more than happy to help. Otherwise, I can refer someone else to you, or just Google, in your area. Boom, boom, done. Meeting done. Don't waste your time, right? So that's important. Now, after you've done a qualifying question, I think it's important to mention that so many developers and so many freelancers leave money on the table. They only provide in their proposal one price. Take it or leave it, right? And they even negotiate on that price sometimes. The amount is irrelevant, but you only offer one price. And I learned this lesson in jewelry, right? Because I was there selling when I was like 17. And I used to work there on weekends and all of this, and I learned so much from that. And I read this example that reminded me of it, which is so great. It talks about this simple question: how do you make a $10,000 Rolex look cheap and affordable? And the answer is you put it next to a $50,000 Rolex, or like another brand, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what that is, and that principle, that psychology, is called price anchoring. Okay. So what that means is you are pricing your, or you are providing a price based off of another price, right? So now let me use an example. I always use three pricing options. Option one, which is like the standard price, and that is my from price. So let's say I've already worked out, that 72,000 example on the 3D printers, and I'm like, okay, look, 6,500. I would price it from 6,500. Okay, so that'll be option one, and I would list, the services. Very important. I'm not listing like how many pages it's going to be. Itemized billing, like logos and like content and all of that type of stuff. I'm not doing that. I'm giving sort of brief overviews of that. So I'm saying option one, standard website with some marketing sort of services done. To set up or some changes. Option two, I might charge. Oh, sorry.
Maybe put your hand to the camera.
There we go. Okay, cool. Okay, sorry, I got a bit too excited there. Okay, so then option two, I would charge a bit more. In this case, if it's 6,500, I would charge maybe 7,500 or 8,000. Okay. Then option three, I would charge much higher than option two. So in this case, let's say I charge 6,500, 8,000. Option three, I might charge 12,000 or even 14 or 15,000, right? And the point of this is very, very important, is most clients will not choose option one. And I can testify to this. I can really testify to this. In most proposals that I send to clients, they often choose, I don't even think I've had a client, no, sorry, I have a client, only one client choose option one. But for the 99% of other clients, they always chose option two, and some chose option 3, which is great, right? So now the point of it is you're trying to make option 2 look like the ideal solution, right? And you can do that by adding, some more services and all that. And remember, because you're using value-based pricing, it's definitely worth your time as well. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. I love the Rolex example too. But from my experience, it was the same thing. If I sent a client one price, let's say of $5,000, I've had rejections from that. But then when I would start adjusting that because I wanted to do this approach, I would find that I can get virtually the same client or the same type of client to choose a higher option when they see all of those things broken up. And what I would do sometimes is I would take away from a product instead of adding to it. Let's say we had all these features, like you get the site, you get all these pages, you get SEO and a logo and all this. What I would do is I would take some features away and lower the price for one of the options. So you can have everything, but in the lower option, you don't get SEO. Well, a client will say, well, I do want SEO though. I do want my site optimized for search engines. So they start, it's almost like an a la carte option. So they start choosing it, and before they know it, they loaded up their cart with more than they plan to come to buy, but they do have the budget. They just didn't like having that one option, and it just seemed high for them. But once they saw that broken up, you don't lose a client, and they would end up choosing more. So I can definitely attest to that, or verify that, I guess. Like 70% of the time. 100%. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. And if you think about it, like, that simple strategy, right, accounts for like so much more income in your bank account. And like, how many freelancers and developers are not using that strategy? So that alone can just increase your income as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to get to this question here, just because somebody donated, so I want to do that, and I will get more into the Q&A, everybody who's watching here, but I'll answer this one because it is more in my field, I guess. Yeah. So it's a Flask. It's just a framework within Python here. To charge for a website like this, I mean, this is got to be your minimal product here. You said it's just login and a couple of pages. What I would do is I would start with a minimum amount that I'm willing to work for. And for me, even though I don't take clients right now, I wouldn't take a project for under 500. Like, that's the lowest. And if this project doesn't exceed like the minimal amount of effort, then I would just charge 500. But it still depends on what the client is, but I would just set that. So Stefan, whatever your minimum is, like if you wouldn't work for less than a certain amount, kind of make that your base. But it's hard to just judge what this application is actually worth. You could try different approaches, but this doesn't seem like it's more than a couple thousand at max, unless there's something I'm missing. So I just wanted to jump into that.
Great.
So Sharir, this is the one we already answered. How does somebody know when they're ready to start? Kyle, what was your answer? It was if you can build a website. Yeah.
Exactly. If you can build a website, you are good enough to start. Don't procrastinate. Stop trying to be perfect, because if you try and wait until you're perfect and know all the different JavaScript languages and frameworks and all this other stuff, you're never going to start. Perfection leads to procrastination. Just start and then learn on the job. I think that's such an important skill set and mindset to have.
Yeah. Perfection is the enemy of progress. That's the term that I've heard and I like to use. It means that if you're trying to master everything, you'll never be ready. You'll never move forward. So I do still have I want to start opening up those questions, Kyle. We are just over an hour. Are you still available, or do you have more time to go to Q&A and answer more? Sure. Okay.
Just give me 13 seconds. I need to charge my laptop. My laptop quick. Just 1 second.
Okay. So while Kyle's gone, I'm going to open something up actually here. Somebody asked, I guess they asked Kyle originally, but I will share the income right now, and I want to go over some expectations of what your first year or couple of years may go to. And some people saw these numbers as very high, and a lot of people thought they were very low too. So that's kind of funny to hear that, but it depends on what your expectation is. So let me just share my screen here. Give me a second. So Kyle, I'm about to share my screen here, and I put this out in a tweet. So if you want to find my Twitter, I guess I didn't link it up. Kyle is linked up though. I'll have to link it up after this, but I wanted to share my, what is that? 5 or 6 years. I think it's since 2015. So 5 years of freelancing. Okay, so I pulled this up, and this right here is about half of the income, maybe a little bit less even, of what I did, at least in revenue. So these are my personal profits and what I had to put into it. But if you look at 2015, I pretty much didn't pay myself. All expenses were just put into, it was going back into, I guess, into the business and getting some contractors to come and help me out. But the first year was $26,000 in revenue, $7,800 in pure profit. So that could be high for some people. That could be low. I know some people start off with way more than that, but that was my experience. Kyle, I don't know if yours was in the same ballpark or not, but that shows a pretty slow start, I think, in most areas, even though I guess depends on who you talk to. This is coming from a marketing background, from knowing that very well. And it was a little bit easier because I think I was more well networked in my city. I know a lot of people live in underdeveloped countries, so they can't just go door to door, but I was hustling, trying to build that base up. So year number 2, 2016, $71,000 in revenue, and we're going to see something interesting occur here. Basically, we see the revenue go down, but the profits go up. So it was $28,000. And at this point, actually in 2015, I had just gotten married and I took a job too. So I was working full time. So this is a side income for me. I didn't just go all in. I was just trying to reinvest everything. So 2017, it was $64,000. At this point, what I did is I actually ended up firing a lot of my clients, if that's the right term, but I ended up just giving away a bunch of the contracts. And I stuck to four to five clients that made me the most amount of money. One client, I think, earned me about $22,000 a year, and that was running AdWords for an account. So I basically got rid of the bottom half. I had over 100 clients in this time frame, and I stuck to those. So I just completely did a purge. I got rid of a bunch of clients, gave a bunch away, and yeah, that was $38,000 right there in that. So this is why we're seeing that profit margin go up from 71 and 28 to about, we're making less, but we're also seeing more of a profit there. Then in 2018, we're seeing the numbers be pretty much the same because the same 4 to 5 clients were with me the whole time. So we go to 64,000, revenue or income goes up right here, profits go up, and 64,000 and 40,000. So that's my breakdown. I know some people wanted to see that. What would you say as far as what people should expect when they're starting in their first years and how they can scale that? And if this is reasonable from what you've seen from other people, because you are teaching people, you've probably heard a lot of stories, success stories, stories of not making it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is great. It inspires a lot of people. And I think also, I think you gave a good disclaimer, like, this is your journey, right? And this is how, and this is what worked for you, and for others, I mean, it can be completely different. I mean, especially also depends, like, which country you're from as well. I think that also has a lot of to do with it. And also the other thing is, like the resources you have available, the time, the money, that you have. So I think those are. That's very important to sort of look at, because if you look at someone who's full-time, who doesn't have to rely on like paying, a car rent, maybe they've got a spouse and things are tight financially and whatever, that's a lot different to someone who's like a student who's like living with their parents and doesn't have any expenses and can dedicate like 8 hours a day to freelancing. So maybe let me start with that. The other thing I want to mention is, I sort of hate this question, to be honest. A lot of people ask me like, hey, I would like to earn, $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 a month. How long is it going to take me? It's like, how do I answer that? Because I mean, if you think about it, it's like number one, I don't know, your finances, your background, your skill set, how you communicate, how you problem solve, all of that type of stuff, right? And that's important. Now, maybe to wrap up and sort of give my 80-20 answer. The bottom line is, I've seen people within 1 month make really good incomes and land clients like thousands of dollars a month, and that sets them up. Great, well done. That didn't happen for me, So, but I'm glad it worked for you straight off the bat. That's great. Now, the reverse is also true. I've seen people after 6 months still not get their first client. And they've tried a lot of different things, but they just can't make it work for various different reasons, right? And I think there's always solutions to whatever the problem is. Maybe maybe they would justify it in their mind like, yes, but I tried to reach out to clients. Okay, but how many clients did you reach out to? Oh, 10. Well, there's your problem, right? So I think like you know, it's a weird answer. You know, it's a weird answer if that makes sense. You know.
Yeah. I know your point's dead on. That's kind of where it was like, okay, people want to see it. It does help to just show, you know, what it is so people can, they're trying to gauge a ballpark, and you're right, that's not correct. But yeah, it so varies on so many different things. Like in my case, I was working day and night, you know, trying to put this together. So there was a lot into it, and I was literally walking door to door. But yeah, there's just no way of gauging that, because I've seen people that have done it for a year. And here's one answer that I don't like, where they'll say, I've done it for 6 months to a year and I've reached out to clients. And let's say you've reached out to 1,000 clients and couldn't get one. The fact that if somebody says it doesn't work is still not true, even though you've went through that. Just because you're reaching out to clients doesn't mean that you're doing the right thing. How you talk to them, like you said, I don't know what your networking skills are like. Are you just what they call vomiting on clients, where you just load up information? I can build you a website, I can do this, and start going into too many technical things. Are you sending good proposals? Are you pricing right? So the answer is to always adjust. I do think anybody can make something happen, but yeah, there's just absolutely no way. I felt it was funny because I pulled up my not my tax returns, but my P&L statements. And again, this was for just one part of it, because in pure revenue, it was probably 2 times, if not 3 times that, because I was outsourcing a lot of work to like photographers, logo designers, you know, just people that did work that I didn't want to do or wasn't able to do. But yeah, I just thought it might be fun to do that. Good but point. It definitely felt,
you answered it perfectly.
Yeah. Cool. So in that case, let's go ahead, and I want to start with the Twitter questions now. And I actually had one for you before I pulled these up. If you were to start your journey again, and I want to try to, I guess, put into an example somebody that may be from a more underdeveloped country. Let's say they can't go door to door. There's just no businesses that want websites. If you were put on an island and you had all your living expenses, or I guess you can survive there, but you had internet and you wanted to start freelancing, how would you start that today? If you just had your internet, you couldn't go anywhere. What would be your first approach to marketing?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I just want to confirm. Can you hear me? Because you broke up there. I don't know if that was my signal or yours.
Oh, no, I can hear you well. I know there's a delay between us, so I'm trying to account for that. There's like a second or two delay, but I can hear you.
Okay, no worries. Sorry about that. Okay, so I think I mean just to sort of rephrase the question back to you. So it's like, let's say I'm in a third world country, which I am. I'm in South Africa. What would I do differently, you know, to start freelancing? Is that the correct question?
I guess not differently, but what would you do today if you couldn't physically see a client? That's probably the better way to say it. Like if you wanted to start freelancing, what would you do right now to, let's say your name was completely erased, nobody knew, you had to change your name for some reason, and you were to start at square one? How would you approach that business? What would your first month, 2 months, and a year would look like?
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, great question. Okay, so number one, I don't like meeting clients in person. You know, I always try and sort of stick to phone calls or Zoom meetings or things like that. So that suits me perfectly. Now, let's say I just start from the beginning, and I didn't have an existing website, no referrals, from scratch. I would start like this. I would want to find a niche to target. I'm not interested in being a generalist, to work with any type of client, across the world, in various different industries with various different budgets and so on. I'm interested in finding a niche and presenting myself as an expert within that niche via a portfolio, a website or an agency website. And then I'll write about that, about any tips that I would recommend that this niche can improve to get sales. And very important, you mentioned earlier, right at the beginning, and I wanted to actually ask you when you discussed about working for free. And I think that's a key point here, because I've done it before and I would do it again. In deciding on a niche, which maybe we can even talk about if you want to, if there's time to talk about how you decide a niche and all that. But maybe I can just sort of go into that briefly. So number one, it could be based on anything you see potential, or anything you see passionate about or something. But basically, what you want to do is you want to decide on a niche that can pay you well and that justifies your time. So what I do is I go to payscale.com. Let's say I'm interested in dentists. I just randomly think of high-paying jobs, right, in the medical niche. For example, I'm in the medical niche, and what I did was I looked at the different titles in the medical niche. So let's say, for example, a dentist, right? I would look at how much they earn on payscale.com as a salary, and then I would sort of work out like, oh, they earn, $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 a year as a salary. I was like, let's say they had to spend 10% of their salary. It's not like that, but let's just work a thumb suck here. They are able to spend $20,000 a year, which means like plus minus $2,000 a month. That's a good enough niche for me to target. So that explains niching down 80-20 very quickly. Okay, so I'll decide on that. Build an agency portfolio website, content around the dentist, how they can get clients, how they can grow, tips on how to improve their website, use examples. Then I would also get free work. So number one, I would try and get paying clients, but that's quite difficult because most importantly, they want to see what you've done. They don't want to see what you can do. I think that's an important differentiator to establish. Now, in order to show what you've done, you need to show examples of that. So how can you show examples? There's two approaches. You can either create, like fake websites by your own domain, dentistry or dentist practice, Los Angeles.com, whatever. Create a website, and the point of this is you're not like being completely fake about it and pretending it's a legit website. The point is this prospective client wants to see like what you can do, and this showcase is like, look, this is what I can do for you if I were to do your website for you. The other option is you need to get testimonials from clients, and the way to do that I recommend is offering free work for clients. Yes, you can try the paid route, but sometimes that doesn't go as well at first. So literally you need to do phone calls, you need to do emails, you need to do everything you can to reach out to hundreds of different dentists around the world, in America, in Australia, in the UK, wherever, and offer them a website for free in exchange for a testimonial. 80%, 90% are going to say no, 99%, but you just need to find that one or two. And once you've got 2 websites for free to get the testimonial, boom, done. You're ready to start charging a client. And then what I would do is that sort of goes into how to get clients, and there's various different ways. So I just want to 80-20 sort of the approaches, right? So how to get clients? Email outreach, which is a very it still works today, but there's a strategy on how to do that. Number one. Number two, you've got Instagram outreach via DM. You've got Facebook groups that still work very well in your niche. You've got AdWords, you've got SEO, ranking relevant articles and pages on Google, and then letting clients find you. You've got LinkedIn, you've got various different other ways. So bottom line is, I've rambled a lot here, but that's pretty much what I would do if I had to start from scratch.
So I'm assuming you would probably also mine that client too, right? Because not only do you want that testimonial, you also want to see if they have referrals for you. Wouldn't you go the approach of seeing if they know other, let's say if this was doctors? Yeah. So I just wanted to touch on that because I'm assuming that's also
You're
something.
right. Yeah, you're right. And I should have mentioned that. Yeah, you're right.
It's funny that you said it's you can reach out to 10 people and you can only give away 2 websites, right? Like it's actually hard to give away a free product sometimes because people might be thrown off. Hey, what's going on here? What are you trying to do? But when you do find it, because that's how it worked for me, was once I found there was a client in a different field. It was more like forensics laboratories. That's what it was in. So there wasn't that much there. But I remember I landed a dentist as a client, and we ended up getting like 4 dentists right after that because he was so thankful, wrote the review, and then said, hey, you can reach out to these people. So now when I reach out to the other dentist, it's not a cold call anymore or a cold email. I can now reference, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I just did some work for them. They said that you might need this too and referred me to it. So now you're starting on a different field, but we've got our foot in the door by doing that. I like that approach. So niching down, doing a bunch of research, and then maybe even starting that free approach route too. I think that's one that's very viable.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, and nothing much more to say. Instead of I stamp that as well.
So let me go into some questions then on Twitter. I'll just read them off instead of showing them on screen. So somebody is asking, let's see. So they said, ask him if he had a family, I mean, wife and kids, or if not so, or if he were not so young, would he still be freelancing? And if yes, would be additional considerations or precautions to live a decent life with family while doing so? It sounds like they're basically asking, if you were more established, would you still take this route, let's say starting from square one, or would you have not been, I guess, so risky? I'm assuming that's kind of the question. It goes kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Good question, and it's always an interesting one to answer that, because it's quite funny, you know. It's almost like it's like someone saying, okay, what would you do in a bank robbery, right? And it's like, you think you would do that, but would you really do that? You know. Mm-hmm. So obviously my answer is going to be, you know, it's going to be based on like assumption on what I think I would have done or what I would do. So I think I've always been a naturally inquisitive or curious person. I ask a lot of questions to a lot of people, and one of the questions that I ask myself is, I'm like, do I want to be working for the rest of my life, you know, 8 to 5 or 9 to 5? And the answer is no. You know, I don't want to be working up until the age of 60 or whatever, up until retirement. So I would insist on trying, you know, other income streams. Would that have been freelancing? I don't know. I can assume so, because based on my skill set, assuming I would have the marketing skill set and web design skill set, then yes, without a doubt, I would definitely offer, you know, do freelancing. If I had a family, if I had financial problems, if I was in a different thing, well, I was in financial problems, but let's say, you know, it looked a bit differently, I'm sure I would have adapted. I would have found some solutions somehow, you know. Yeah, I don't know how else to sort of answer that question.
Yeah, that's good. You answered that. Okay, so source code then, somebody's asking about that. Who keeps it? So let's say you develop an application, or let's say just a website. What do? Do you just hand off that code? Let's say you use GoDaddy and WordPress. Do you just hand them the source code, the GoDaddy account? How does that look in your case, I guess?
Good question. For the most part, pretty much they own it in a way, or you know what, in contracts, I've got a professional contract that I got written up by a friend, a lawyer in Amsterdam. So he's a commercial lawyer, and that's sort of like a legit contract, right? And within one of the clauses, it does talk about, you know, ownership of you know, certain assets, let's say. And obviously that's for like large clients and stuff. Obviously you need to make sure that they own their assets. It's fair, you know, in other words, in this case being the source code and all that. But I would say, generally speaking, for most smaller clients, I'm talking about websites that you charge, you know, even small websites, like, you know, from like a one page or something, from like $500 to, let's say, $2,000-3,000. I've always used like a proposal template. And I do have a proposal template for free. You know, maybe if someone wants to download it, but basically I use that, and I sort of treat that as my contract, and I don't mention anything, you know, about ownerships of assets. So so I sort of leave it open-ended, and there's some ambiguity to it, and some sort of license there in a way that, if, for example, I've done this before, like in my medical niche, I would create a website for a client, and I would literally just copy that WordPress theme, and then with the information, duplicate it, you know, migrate it to the relevant client domain, change the content and the stuff, boom, done. So technically I reuse it. Technically I reuse the existing template asset that I created, but that wasn't explicitly mentioned in the contract. So I think it doesn't, for my 80-20 answer would be, for big clients, I don't think you should take that risk, but for smaller, everyday, average clients, I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. How do you handle difficult clients? Let's say a client I mean, I think I'm pretty sure you've dealt with it because I've dealt with it multiple times. Like, how do you deal with a client requesting something unreasonable or accusing you of something?
Great question. Great. It's amazing. I was driving with my wife today. We went to, we went to work and have some breakfast somewhere, and I was just telling him about this client. Like, listen, I don't know if I should just say like I'm done with this client because she asked for like a lot of revisions, and it's like I'm fine with that in terms of content writing and stuff. I'm like, I'm fine, I understand, but man, this is taking a lot of my time, and I'm not happy, So it's quite fresh, So that client, I might say like, look, sort of, I'm not interested anymore. But there have been cases, especially at the beginning, up until recently, I would like it's quite rare to be honest with you, but very much at the beginning, I had this one client, and he was paying me, I remember, $1,000 a month to handle some marketing stuff. This was like probably like probably about 4 years ago maybe, and he would all the time phone me, chat to me, like even on a weekend. And because I needed the money, I was like, I sort of sucked it up, right? And then that one time, after a few months, I was like, screw this, like I've really had enough, So I got off the phone with him, and I just like had this like big anxiety, and I was like, I'm just too stressed. I just can't handle this. So I sent him a WhatsApp and a message in a respectful way, and I told him, I'm like, look, like if it's going to carry on like this, I'm going to have to leave. I can't work like this. All this like micromanaging and all of this type of stuff. And it's amazing. After that, he completely left me. He respected my viewpoints a lot more and all of that. So it was quite interesting. By standing up for myself in a respectful way and addressing the issue, he actually stepped back a bit and actually saw like, listen, like I'm also an expert. I know that you are an expert in your field, but I'm an expert in my field. You don't have to talk to me like that and like micromanage me all the time. You do your thing, let me do my thing, and we can work well together, So in that case, that's what I did. I haven't had a lot of fussy clients besides that, and I'm curious to know, like from your side, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so that's the approach would be the exact same thing. So if you need the money, sometimes you're gonna have to deal with it. My biggest client, even though he paid a crap ton, was hell to deal with. Like you said, constant phone calls on the weekend, same thing, micromanaging. And for me, I got to a point where I had to take a risk because I still needed the money, but I was able to get to a point to where it's like, okay, if I lose a client, it's not the end of the world. I can continue. So once I got to that point, that's where I stood my ground. I mean, ideally, everybody would stand their ground early, but the same exact thing happened. They end up respecting you for it. Everything was fixed up, at least on that end of things, and it got a lot better. But if a client doesn't do that, I fired clients. One time I had a client that I've mentioned this story in a stream before, but they signed a contract to deal with a new or basically a whole new website to do SEO. And I warned them in advance that, hey, if you want a full rebuild, like completely different system, I forgot, I think website was like hand coded. It was just a static site. I said, you're going to lose your SEO ranking. It wasn't good anyways. He was like on page 2 or 3, but I told him he might lose it. The second the SEO ranking went away because we took down the site and we had to put up the new one, he called me demanding that we call Google and get the ranking back, which he obviously had no idea how this works. I can't call Google, it was just ridiculous. And I basically wrote him a formal letter and actually sent it to his office instead of writing him or emailing him. I just sent it in almost like a legal letter. And I said that, hey, you pull this crap on us again, we're done, but we're going to be done after we finish this project for you. Once all the deliverables are there, you're done with us. And we just fired them. That was it.
Wow.
And they were actually supposed to be on a retainer too. So I basically said, we are ending our part of that contract too, because that you're in contract with us, not us with you in that sense. So we can end this. So we said, here's a list of people you can call if you want. I just Googled up some other developers in the city and other companies, but yeah, I just fired them. If you're able to do that. Yeah.
Sorry, not a cool name, and AJ, there's your answer.
Oh, somebody asking that in here, right? How to deal with difficult clients. Oh, not a cool name. Yeah. So Kyle, I mentioned this in the beginning when we started the stream. Kyle Prinsloo is all over Google. Just look up freelancing. He's on free code camp. He has his own website and blog and Twitter. It's all linked up in the video description. So if you don't know Kyle, shame on you, but now you do.
Yeah, thanks. Not a cool name. Basically, I'm a freelancer. So that's that.
Okay, let's see. So what kind of projects have you worked on this year? So freelance wise, none. I've completely went into YouTube, and I've actually just been passing off my clients. So there's some that I help maintain, but yeah, I just completely, that's why in my list, it was 2020 was listed as completely blank. Okay. So I'm going to go for the more recent ones. I'll try to find some older questions, but I do want to address them. So if you guys asked a question earlier, we won't get into everything. Let's make sure it's relevant to this, but let's see. So if someone started freelancing, let's say from today, what would you recommend he or she look for in freelancing projects? Kyle, I think you kind of went into this already. You talked about niching down, finding out what your skill set is. Like for me, like I think how I would start, like when I started originally, I knew WordPress and Wix. So what kind of clients can you get with WordPress and Wix? And I wasn't even that advanced with that either. So, okay, that means your local business, bloggers, anybody that needs basically a static website and simplified websites. And then as you expand your skills, that's what I would say is advance the skills or advance the client reach as your skills advance. If you can now build out e-commerce websites with WordPress, that's just a new potential client for you.
Agreed.
So somebody said there's a question on Mumble. So that's the open source project I'm working on. So let's see that. I think they commented.
Oh, cool.
So let's see. So Praveen is asking, he says it's really hard, and he actually does freelance too, but he's saying it's really hard to get started on a freelance project on a freelance platform because there are already freelancers with good reviewers and better experiences and deliverable projects. How can we face that? Standing out, client or Kyle, you already mentioned this, but if you can maybe elaborate on that, how do you stand out from other developers?
Yeah, I think it actually boils down to which platform you are using, right? And maybe let me start off by saying, like, I'm not a big fan of the platforms. Yes, it works for some, but for most people, it does not work. I would actually recommend you're starting over from a portfolio website or an agency website, or to rather even look via Twitter. Maybe I can use an example quickly because this really worked for me. So I think about 2 or 3 years ago, what I did was, I don't want to say it because I know it's going to happen to me. I know a lot of guys that have tried it with me, and well, actually some of them I've worked with. So maybe it would work. So anyway, I was looking for large accounts, right? And I was looking for accounts that guys who sold digital products, right? And who were selling like good amounts, like I'm not talking about $5,000 a month. I'm talking about like 10, 20, 30,000, 50,000 plus, a month on digital products. So guys will really do well. And basically what I did was I just DM'd them on Twitter, and I went through their website or the landing page, and I sort of saw if I could give some advice to improve it. I'm like, hey, I've already designed a wireframe for you for free, completely free of charge. Please check it out. You can use it, not, but this is just my 2 cents. I thought you might find it helpful. And bottom line is, one of them actually came on board, and he actually wanted to pay me $500 to say thank you. I said, no problem, you can keep it. And eventually, like 2 months later or something, I DM'd him again. I'm like, hey, if you need someone to help you with your marketing, I can help you. And I charged him $2,500 a month, and he came on board. And so that was like 2 or 3 years ago, and I haven't used that strategy since. But for example, I know that that's one approach that can work. And again, I mean, there's so many ways of getting clients as well, which I don't think we've got too much time to talk about all the details. But I think that's a good approach, that works as well.
Yeah. I just loved your opening story so much about how you stood out. Just to go back to that question, I guess it's going to require a lot, but it also doesn't take. It's funny. That's contradicting. It requires a lot, but it doesn't require a lot. Like a lot of people just do the bare minimum. They'll send you an email and that's it. But you're going to have to do more than that. It's still not that much, but it's going to take that perseverance. And like what you just said, you reached out to this person, and there's a chance that person, and probably plenty of them, didn't go with you. So you're putting in all this effort. The answer would be just to put in that effort, find ways to do something different to catch somebody's attention. So this one, what do you do if a client is not paying? So let's say they sign a contract, and there's a few approaches to this. I'm just curious on what you would.
Yeah, for sure. And I think sort of my general answer to questions like this is number one, it depends on how you are charging for the project. If you're charging hourly, good luck getting your money, because that's going to be a lot of issues and admin and hassle and all that stuff. Now, very important, if it's fixed based or value based pricing, I've got a company policy, and I tell the client this. So I say, in the terms, in the proposal template or within the contract, I say 100% full payment upfront. So there's my company policy: payment upfront. That solves the problem, right? Now, obviously, you've got a follow-up question, but what happens if a client does not want to pay the full 100% upfront? Then what I say to them is, I say, look, I don't do this all the time, which I don't, I'm being honest, but I will make an exception. I will charge 50% upfront, 50% of the amount. But here's where a lot of developers go wrong, and here's a solution to it. You don't say 50% upfront and 50% on completion, because the word completion is very relative. Is it complete based on what you've done or the client's understanding? So if you're expecting to get the other 50% at the end of the month, the client is not happy with it, good luck trying to get paid. It's going to take you another month to get that 50%. So this is where it's important. I say, look, it's not company policy, but I will make an exception, 50% upfront. However, I do require the other 50%, the remaining 50% on X date, whether the project is complete or not. Because remember, this is just helping them from a budgeting perspective and helping them so that they can trust you and they've got doubts and all that stuff. So let's say I know it's going to be a 3-month project. I would make sure without a doubt that I'm going to take 50% upfront before I commence, and then 50% the remaining on the 2nd month. I'm not going to wait until the 3rd month, and you have to agree to that and make sure that the client understands that. So that's pretty much my solution and answer to that problem.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I was going to do too, is to get that money beforehand. So to break it up, I would rarely do 100%. I would usually do it in chunks, but I always made sure that there was no deliverable product until that money was paid. So the client, so that way I never put in work and never got paid for it. Because there are clients where you put in some work and they'll just say, well, I changed my mind. So you still put in work now that you don't get paid for. So by setting those deadlines, you know exactly how much you need to produce. So if you're way ahead of schedule, you can even slow down or come to your client and say, hey, we feel like we can deliver this next part quicker. Let's rearrange that payment, but make sure it comes in first, I guess.
Agreed.
Yeah. So in that case, Kyle, if you see any questions, I don't want to hold you too long. We're at 1 hour and 37 minutes. This is pretty typical for my stream, but I want to respect your time. I realize I didn't tell you ahead of time how long it was going to take.
No worries.
Cool.
No worries. I mean, we can do another 10, 15 minutes if you're keen, or if others are keen. Cool. Maybe if someone wants to ask some more questions as well. Let's just see which technology do I suggest to put effort into to work for long term. Dennis would know better, but you really can't go wrong with JavaScript. It's the foundation of pretty much every cool framework and everything there is, and that's pretty much my 80-20 answer to that. What do you have to say to that, Dennis?
So somebody was asking what tech stack to start with, is that correct? Or what technology to learn?
Yeah, which technology would you use?
Yeah, so I guess this depends on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to go the freelance route and you want to go with the smaller clients, I would consider learning a language like JavaScript and going into HTML and CSS, but I would stick to WordPress just to start and see if that's something that I want to do. So I would go there, see if I can get some clients, and then if I really was into development, because you shouldn't do it if you're not into it. It's really difficult, I guess, to learn. Not difficult, but it's really time consuming. It's going to require a lot of energy. So I kind of have this approach where I'm a very hardworking person, but I also have this approach of what's the least amount of work I can do to get the most amount of results. So by using that approach, I'm able to always test the waters too. So that way I don't spend 6 months learning PHP and decide I can't get clients with it and, just waste all this time. So I'm always trying to see a little bit, because now if I get clients with WordPress like I did, it piqued my interest to learning more. Okay, I want to pick apart these websites. So let's go ahead and add in HTML and CSS so I can customize these templates or customize a part of a website.
Nice. Great answer. Okay, and then brand text, YouTube. How do I get freelancing clients when you just started freelancing and don't have reviews, because people mostly prefer other people with higher ratings and reviews. How do you get to land one? So I assume you're referring to some form of a job platform. It seems like it. With like Fiverr or Upwork or something. And the bottom line is that's the hard truth. But as I said at the beginning, there are certain ways of trying to strategically approach that situation about trying to get some reviews and trying to word it a bit differently. So let's say instead of being a web developer, you could be a web developer for the real estate agent, or a web developer for, I don't know, like SaaS, so you can niche down and sort of differentiate yourself within that broad ocean, right? In terms of just getting reviews and also from a general sense of testimonials, that's important because clients want to see what you've done to help other clients, and we did touch on like working for free. That's an option. So definitely consider that.
So this one's going to vary depending on where you're at. Every country, I'm sure, has it differently. But no, you don't need an LLC. You can start something in the U.S. called a sole proprietorship, and I'm pretty sure that's somewhat uniform for a lot of places in the world. They probably follow the same structure, even though the name might not be the same there. But a sole proprietorship basically means that you are yourself. You're not hiring a bunch of employees or anything like that. So your sole proprietorship could just be, in my case, it would just be Dennis Ivanov. Like I'm operating as a business as myself, and usually you'll just get either you can use your social security number or they'll give you a tax ID. So now when you're reporting your taxes, you're putting it under that business name. So no, you don't need an LLC, but you do usually need to start a formal company now. Now, small projects might work a little bit better, or you could probably start a few projects and just take that income in as yourself pretty quick. And that's not usually going to be fine in the early stages. But once you start pushing over a certain amount is when you might want to establish your business and make it more official. So let's see.
I like that.
I haven't had a chance to read this one. I'm just going to read it up here. So I have a product in mind and know it takes time to build. Takes time to build it. How long do you tell yourself to be patient and take time to learn? I mean, as long as it takes, I guess. For me,
how badly do you want it?
Yeah, like for me, I had a product that I wanted to build, and I poured in 3 months, and that was enough to get me like started and get that minimal viable product. But it was probably another 9 months of continuous development to really master that. So yeah, it depends how bad you want it. So in that case, I'll probably just end the stream on that one then. So I don't want to be digging through chat messages right now and trying to find the relevant questions. But Kyle, thank you so much for joining this. The insight was amazing. I stalked you for a little bit, read a bunch of your articles, and you just came out with the charging by the hour one. Funny because I just put out a video on that one too. Not just, but maybe like a month ago. So a lot of similarities, and it's really cool talking to somebody who's also done this. I've noticed we click very well when it comes to our style in pricing and our marketing and business background. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming and giving your insights and taking your time.
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I've really been a big fan of your channel for a long time now, actually, like since last year. And it's been an honor and a privilege to chat with you. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be in touch after this as well. And also to everyone else in the comments, if you're still with us, thank you so much. And I hope you found at least some value from it. If you have any questions, more than happy to help. And I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. And Kyle is linked up to his book, his website, and his Twitter account too. So if there's anything else you need me to link up, let me know and we'll put it there. So that's it for now. I'm going to end the broadcast.